good morning, everyone. Just as a reminder, we would like for you to keep your mics muted during the call. With the number of folks on here, it'll start to create a pretty raucous feedback loop if we don't. And I'll try to remember to hit the spacebar key when I need to say something. Well, good morning, everyone. So exciting to see folks, not only from our campus and Chattanooga communities, but I see folks signing in from across the state. So that's exciting. Welcome to the very first installment of what we're calling Workstation. I thought I'd share just a little bit about how this concept came about and really what led us to do this. So a couple of weeks ago, obviously, we began thinking in the Center for Professional Education about what we could do to be somewhat responsive to our customers, and that's both in the Chattanooga area and beyond. And one of the things that, at least in terms of a theme that kept coming up, was being mindful of productivity and also managing healthy lifestyles. And so as we started contemplating what we could do, I happened to think about my good friend Shewanee Howard-Baptiste, who's a professor in UTC's Health and Human Performance Department. And we initially were going to just do some sort of a web broadcast that we thought maybe 2 or 3 people would sign up for. That concept, in really just a little over a week's time, evolved into what we began branding as a Today Show-like webinar series that would focus on an important topic and would feature someone with great expertise. And so at some point, I will mute this and let Shewanee, with the great expertise, take over. But it's really exciting to see so many folks tuning in. I don't know if that is, if you're like me, by about Saturday afternoon, it really started to kind of hit home that, you know, this is going to get old. And we understand that, but it's important to stay the course. It's important to remain vigilant in the things that we know we ought to do. And so I think this week is going to be even more timely than what we may have initially thought. So the idea was for Shewanee to spend some time each day this week focusing on 2 themes that would maintain or help you maintain a positive and productive mindset as you go about your day. Recognizing that we are all, in fact, most of the folks that are signing in that I see are all working from home today. So, you know, the expectation is that we continue to work. But we also have lives to manage as well. And we've got, some of you have kids at home now and spouses at home, and you're probably looking for a vacation at this point, and I understand that. So nonetheless, without any further ado, I am going to introduce Dr. Shewanee Howard-Baptiste, again with UTC's Health and Human Performance Department, and she's going to share with you the Power C's and maintaining a positive and healthy work style.
Thank you so much, John, for that great introduction. You make me sound really, really good, so I appreciate that. Also, a lot of thanks to Jeff and the CPE office for all that they've done, and just all the coordination that's been involved to make sure that we can bring this opportunity to our UTC community. So as John stated, my name is Shewanee Howard-Baptiste. I'm faculty in the Department of Health and Human Performance. And just a couple of things that we wanted to talk about today that we're titling the Power C's. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can kind of just follow along in this quick PowerPoint. So again, we're talking about tips for a healthier work from home experience. As John stated, we're all definitely transitioning to what it means to work from home, but also still being very productive. So the one thing that I want to start with, our first Power C for today, is the CDC. It is so vitally important to make sure that we are following CDC guidelines at home, and now home is work, how we engage with our family, how we engage with our friends, and also how we engage with the community. We know that COVID-19 is very, very serious, and we want to make sure, I know the Chancellor and our entire UTC campus and community is making sure that we all stay informed in terms of the status, rates, what's going on, and how we can protect ourselves. So the first thing you want to keep in mind in terms of the CDC guidelines, again, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is to make sure that if you develop any symptoms, if you develop a fever, a cough, or you have difficulty breathing, you want to make sure you call your care provider for medical advice. That is really the best course of action in terms of figuring out if you've been exposed, if you're going to test positive, if you're going to test negative. It's very important to seek medical advice from your primary care provider, and really be intentional to let that primary health care provider know what your signs and symptoms are. The second point is to make sure that we all know, again, this is repetitive information, but I want to make sure that I'm reiterating information from the CDC, is that older adults and people who have underlying severe medical conditions are the most vulnerable population. Initially, we saw that older adults were most impacted, but as you can see now, some of those trends are now we're seeing infants, we're seeing children, we're seeing adults not just be exposed or test positive, but unfortunately pass away. So we want to make sure that if our family or friends have an underlying health condition like asthma or diabetes, chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular disease, or any serious complication, that they are at a greater risk for developing. Again, doesn't mean that they will get it, but we want to make sure we're checking on our folks and family who may be more at risk. The next policy in terms of our CDC guidelines is making sure that we're watching for signs and symptoms. So we know that reported illnesses can range from very mild symptoms to very severe symptoms or even death in terms of those confirmed cases. So we know, again, this is leading from 2019 to the current day, and we know that these symptoms may last between 2 to 14 days after that initial person has been exposed. So that incubation period that we hear about the news in terms of that home isolation, self-isolation, is really important that we're staying home. And I know we've seen commercials, we've seen celebrities, we've seen different people talk about what it means to stay at home, but that's really one of the best courses of action the CDC talks about in terms of flattening the curve, is really to stay at home and limit your exposure to other people. So some of those signs and symptoms include a fever, a cough, shortness of breath, again, flu-like symptoms. So again, if you're developing these symptoms, you want to make sure that you contact your healthcare provider. The next thing it's important to know is how it spreads. And so the CDC talks about making sure that we take action steps to protect ourselves. So that's what we talk about, or it's talked about in terms of social distancing and making sure that we're at least 6 feet away from other people. I live downtown. Well, you all know I live on campus. And so it's been interesting that just walking outside, everybody is kind of ducking and dodging and making sure that we're all kind of having 6 feet between us. So we all wave when we're walking or running, we say hello, but we're making sure that we maintain that distance even when we're outside. So make sure that you're taking steps to protect yourself and to protect others. So again, if you are sick, if you don't feel well, it's important to stay home, making sure that you cover your coughs and sneezes. My husband used to work with elementary school students, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it's called DAB. And so it's a song, like kind of a hip hop song that young people listen to. But dab is this kind of dance where you literally kind of cover your face with your elbow, and it really teaches kids to sneeze or to cough into kind of the inside of their armpit. So we want to make sure that we're conscious, that we're mindful to cover our sneezes, to cover our coughs, but we cover it with the inside of our arm and our sleeve, and then making sure that we're washing our hands for at least 20 seconds each time. If you're sick, the CDC guidelines suggest that you do wear a face mask only if you are sick. So it's important to clean and disinfect those surfaces that we touch every day, our phones, our remote control, our wallets, even the straps of our purses, the countertops where we cook and prepare food, around the sink, the handles that we touch every day. So it's important to do those things on a daily basis. If you develop emergency warning signs for COVID-19, make sure you're getting medical attention immediately. So again, these troubling or emergency warning signs include if you're having really a difficult time breathing, you have persistent or pressure or pain in your chest, new confusion, inability to arouse, extreme fatigue, bluish lips or face. These are extreme emergency warning signs. So you want to make sure that you're seeking emergency attention immediately. And again, these are not all the symptoms, but it's important to contact your medical provider if you have severe or concerning symptoms. So ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19, again, if you are sick, is stay at home, except to get medical care, making sure that you're separating yourself from others in the home. And again, this is known as home isolation. Going in terms of calling ahead before visiting the doctor. About 2 weeks ago, my husband was experiencing some extreme pain in his knee. So when we called the doctor, we went up there, we filled out a form, then we went back to our car. So we had to wait in our vehicle. Then they called a cell phone. Then we went inside. So again, a lot of hospitals and medical providers are making sure that there's a system in place to ensure that everyone is protected, particularly our medical, nursing, and physicians that are on that front line. So again, wear a face mask if you're sick, cover your coughs and sneezes, clean your hands often. And again, avoid sharing personal household items. So I know it's tempting when people share food or you have some dessert, you're like, oh, taste this. Make sure you don't share personal household items or drink after each other. And again, clean those high touch surface areas that we just spoke about. And again, monitoring your symptoms. So if you're feeling a little ill, you might want to take your temperature every day. There are different apps that are out there now that can help you kind of really monitor your symptoms on a daily basis. So our second critical self-reflection is our last power C for today. So oftentimes when we have these types of transitions, people forget to really check in. We kind of just go back to work and kind of go back to the things that we need to do every day. But it's important to really talk to our family, to talk to our friends, and just be honest with ourselves about how are we feeling? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel frustrated? Am I nervous? Am I worried about how I'm going to juggle working from home every day, but I have little ones at home. I have an older parent or older relative that I'm helping to care for. So it's okay to really be honest about how we're feeling, no matter what those feelings may be. And we know that they could change on a day-to-day basis. So it's important to explore and evaluate yourself in terms of what those experiences might be, and really looking at your whole self. This is a particular point in time, and it's a hard point in time, but we want to make sure that we're connecting with family and friends, that we're honest about how we feel, and then thinking about ways that we can improve those experiences so that we have a better day. And so part of this critical self-reflection is thinking about your experience in terms of how you're experiencing life right now in terms of at home, but also reflecting about how you feel, but then thinking about what can you learn from this experience. So it's been funny with my mom and my family. I have a family in St. Louis. I have a brother that's in San Diego, and my mom is 72. And so we had the bright idea that we should all Zoom, as though Zoom never existed before, and we only saw each other when we would go home or we would visit. And so Zoom has been a really powerful way, and just there are other apps that you can use that really allow you to connect with family and friends, because there's something about physically seeing the people that you love. And so what we learned from this experience is that we sent out the Zoom link, my siblings and I were all on it, and my mom did it. And so we were so excited that she was able to download the technology. She was on the app, and it really felt good for her just to see kind of all of her kids just in that little bar across the top of the screen. So even though we talk, we hear each other's voices, but it was something very powerful about seeing each other. So that's one of the things that I wanted to share that we've learned from this experience, is that we need to make sure that we're incorporating mom more into our technology. So as you think about this critical self-reflection, consider journaling, meditation, anything that kind of centers you and puts you at a place of feeling positive and optimistic about the day. One way to do that is to start with gratitude. So it can just be something very small. Some people like to write it down. Some people listen to a song. You may start with a guided meditation or yoga. There's so many resources online, but the main thing is to start with gratitude. So even just when you get up in the morning, just thinking about what are 3 things that you're really thankful for. So, we had a really good dinner last night, sweet potatoes, quinoa, chicken sausage. I'm getting hungry again, and it's just breakfast time. But we had a really great meal yesterday that my husband prepared, and we just sat and talked. So that's something that I was really grateful for this morning. Another thing I was grateful for is the opportunity to chat with all of my UTC family and friends and just talk about things and ways that we can really move forward through this difficult time with an attitude of positivity and gratitude. And then the third thing that I'm really thankful for is that I'm looking forward to going outside today. It's supposed to be a nice day, so being able to go for a walk. So anything that you want to start with in terms of thinking about how you can start your day with gratitude is a great place to start in terms of critical self-reflection. So that's all I have for today. So again, our first power C's are following the CDC guidelines and critically thinking about how we feel and how we can start our day with the attitude of gratitude. So this is time that we have for questions, if anyone has any questions.
Shewanee, we've asked them to type their questions into the text box or the chat box. It should be down at the bottom of the window. That way it'll keep the Zoom from getting overwhelmed with everybody trying to ask at one time. So if you have a question for Shewanee, just type that into the text box. We have a few minutes set aside for this, so we'll do that. Joanna says, we've started her day off great, so that's always good.
Thank you, Joanna.
While we're letting folks ponder any questions, I saw a quote last week, and it's a little bit cheesy and sappy, I guess, but it really stuck with me. And it basically said, your mind is like a garden, and your thoughts are like seeds. You can either grow flowers or you can grow weeds. And I think so much of what you talked about today really sort of sets us up to go through our day and even through life with that sort of positive mindset. It's, as I said earlier, I was doing okay with all this until about Saturday afternoon, but it was one of those nice, warm, sunny days, and I was kind of like, you know what, I'm sort of getting tired of being stuck in the house. So it's important to keep looking for those things of inspiration. I also find myself having to turn the news off. I enjoy watching the news because I like to stay connected. But it can have a negative consequence if you just allow it to overrun your thought process. So I think it's important to stay informed and know what's going on in the world around you, but I don't think we need to know every time somebody tests positive. I mean, that to me starts to get a little overwhelming. So anyway, just some random thoughts. I'm not seeing any questions. Jeff, if you see any questions, let me know.
I see a couple of questions. The first is, will we be able to access the slides? So I will definitely send this to John and Jeff, and I'm happy to share this in any format that anybody would like. So whether it's PowerPoint or PDF, with notes, whatever you guys like, I'm happy to share that each day this week. So I'll make sure Jeff and John get that today. Chris Stokes had a question with seasonal depression and being indoors. Any tips? I do suffer from pretty bad seasonal allergies, but in terms of seasonal depression, I think that's where we have to think about connecting with our medical or healthcare provider that can provide specific tips on how to manage that. I would say that's personally outside kind of the scope of my experience. But I think I know that it's very real and people do suffer from it, particularly not being able to be outdoors as much as they would like. So I would say connect with your medical or your healthcare provider, your counselor, therapist, anybody that might have some more detailed information in terms of how to address that. So I don't want to give a lot of advice in that area just because it's outside the scope of my expertise. Other questions? Do I recommend mindfulness apps or other ways to add some structure to meditation? Absolutely. Julia Matthews, I'm sorry, Mark Holcomb is stealing a little bit of my thunder from another day this week where I'm going to provide more detailed information. So Mark, if you tune in, and I'm not sure what day it is because I'm here every day this week, I will definitely have more detailed information for you about what those specific apps are. Thank you, Mark. So that you can download those. One thing that I just started with is YouTube. And so if you just do a search on YouTube of 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute gratitude, mindfulness, meditation, it can give you a midday, a morning, an afternoon, evening. So that's a good place to start between now and when I tell you what those specific apps are. So thank you for that question, Mark. I received an email from my neighbor. She's having outdoors exercise get together with neighbors, but putting exercise mats 7 feet apart. This sounds against social distancing. What is your response to this? That's a really good question, Kelly. I think that kind of falls in that line of how much interaction is too much or too little. What I've personally been doing is just exercising at home. There's lots of YouTube videos. YouTube is our great friend. There's lots of things that you can do at home. So that's kind of what I've been doing in terms of just kind of providing that extra layer of protection. Because I've come in contact with a lot of students and different people in the community. So I just want to make sure that I'm protecting myself, but also protecting other people. I may be just erring a little bit extra on the side of caution in terms of just working out at home. But again, even though it's, 7 feet apart, you're still interacting in kind of a closed environment, even though it's outside. So that's a little tricky. You may just want to ask your healthcare provider, or there may be some additional information on the CDC's website about what it means to engage in group exercise, even though it's outside. So that's a great question. I would just continue exercising indoors, Kelly, if you can. And then when you're walking outside or doing something outside, making sure possibly that it's walking or doing something else where you're not kind of in a set closed environment. Oh, I see, Kelly. She said she's not participating in exercise activity. She's just thinking that it's not a good idea. So yeah, I kind of agree with you that if you can limit exposure to groups, that still some would consider a social setting. So yeah, I'd probably agree with you in terms of exercising caution and not encouraging people to participate in that way, at least right now. Any other?
It looks like the questions and comments may have slowed down a little bit. As Shewanee alluded to, we're going to be here all week. She has 2 different focal points that she's going to share each day. And as you probably figured out, they all start with a C. So they're the Power Cs. I'm so proud of my grandparents. They're taking a daily dose of vitamin C. They're convinced that that's going to keep them well. So we're going to do the same thing with our Power Cs. And we will wrap this up for today, but be sure and join us each day at 8:30, and we will get more inspiration from Miss Shewanee Howard-Baptiste.
Looking forward to it. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great Monday.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
Bye.